All right. You want to introduce yourself and kind of what company you're with, and we'll kind of start from there.
All right. My name is Shay Soma, and I make surfboards. The company name is SOMMA Special Designs.
Nice. And how did you get started doing that?
So it was one of those things. It was just purely a hobby for a long time. I was working at the public defender's office as an investigator for about 11 years.
Really?
And so I had always been, surfed since I was a kid and always interested in surfboard design and that kind of thing. And when I finally had just a couple extra bucks in the pocket to spend on some tools and blanks and all that kind of thing, I just dove in. I spent about a year or so lurking on these surfboard design forum website called Swaylocks.
Okay.
It was a really active forum. It was essentially Reddit for surfboard design in the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent a good amount of time looking into the process of how to build boards through that, and then eventually bought the tools and just kind of started hacking away in the backyard.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So you're just building for yourself to begin with.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what was like kind of the spark of like, oh, I want to keep doing this? Because like it seems like it's a hard thing to kind of. It seems like there's a steep learning curve with it.
Totally. Yeah, especially when it comes to the glassing process. Shaping too, shaping and glassing, they're kind of two different skill sets.
Yeah.
And I was interested in learning the whole process start to finish. Mm-hmm. So yeah, my very first board, I laid up a fin panel, foiled a fin, glassed that on, did color work for the glassing, shaped it, all hand shaped and everything, and it was just a disaster.
Really?
The very first one was horrible. I still have it. It was just bad, but it was fun. It was, it's dusty and you're working with chemicals and it feels a little mad scientist-y, and then at the end of it you have something that you can go play in the ocean with. And so I was hooked immediately. I thought that I started shaping the second one within like a week of making the first one. Yeah, for sure. I was just like, okay, well, I got that first one out of the way. Now I can make something good. And the second one was actually really good. And I wish I still had that board. I sold it on Craigslist, but the second one was much better than the first. That's for sure.
So the first one, how did that work? Like as far as like surfing goes, it was
bad. Yeah,
it was terrible.
Yeah. It was like a tiny single fin. The design was bad. The execution was bad. It was just all bad.
Yeah, but you got to start somewhere. You know what I mean? It's
100%.
Like, yeah. Well, that's interesting.
I think being bad at stuff is undervalued. Like
I think failing is undervalued.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's like that's how you learn, right?
Exactly.
And so that's just embracing that and saying like, okay, great, like I can only go up from here.
Yeah,
is a good mindset, I think.
So now, like that first one, you got out of the way, and you're like, oh, these are all the things that I would not have done or done better.
Totally.
Yeah,
exactly. It was immediately apparent what I was doing wrong on a lot of levels.
Oh, really?
Yeah, from the shape to the glassing to the fin, all of it. Yeah.
So you started here, or you were start somewhere else?
Yeah, San Luis Obispo.
San Luis.
I grew up in Orange County in Tustin, and then I came to SLO in 2003 to go to college, and then I've been here since then.
Like Poly, or
Cal Poly,
Cal Poly. So how are the waves different here than they are down in Southern California? They got to be different, right? A little bit.
Yeah, once you get north of Point Conception, the weather patterns become a lot more raw. And so you're exposed to a lot more wind and swell, and it basically gets more energy in the water, but also a lot more fickle conditions down in that Southern California bight, inside of the Channel Islands and where Southern California kind of hooks inward and is more south facing. The weather is a lot warmer. The water is warmer too, and the sea conditions get a lot smoother. It's more consistently clean and kind of better surfing conditions down in Southern California.
Yeah.
But you also get bigger swell and more swell exposure up here. So that, we have our moments. It's just more fickle up here.
Yeah, definitely. Right. So how has that kind of changed your approach to surfing?
My favorite thing about surfing since I was a kid was actually more of just like the exploration aspect of it, of like, oh, what's that spot around the corner? What's going on over there? How's that different, on a different tide or a different swell, and like kind of that sense of discovery and adventure to it.
Yeah.
And so when I came up here, it was like being a kid in a candy store, because that's what it is around here more often than not. And even though the surf conditions are harder to get good,
Yeah.
you have more open space and more places to explore and kind of find spots to yourself. There are obviously well-known places as well,
Yeah.
like The Rock or Pismo Pier or that kind of thing.
Right.
But if you want to get off the beaten path and find some more space, then that's available here, which is really appealing to me.
Yeah. It doesn't seem as crowded as it did. We lived down there too. We lived in Santa Monica and the Simi Valley and stuff.
For sure.
So and I was in Venice when I was in Santa Monica all the time. In 2008, 9, somewhere in there. But yeah, it seemed like the beaches were like crazy, like super busy.
Totally.
And the locals are like, hey, like,
yeah, you definitely get the localism factor up here too, but it's just a different vibe because you're like, nowhere near a parking lot, and so you just have a little. It's just like you and that dude.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a different energy. I mean, I love just the fact that there's wilderness at the beach here. I grew up going to places where it was like you parked more or less on the sand, and you look back from the ocean and you just see buildings and houses and whatever. And so to be in places where you look back and you can see nature is just really special, and I feel like that's it's just really unique, especially in California.
Definitely. Yeah. Like Montana de Oro and stuff. I don't know if you surf out there, but yeah, that's like the first thing that came to mind. I was like, you kind of got to hike in to the beach there.
Yeah.
And I
definitely.
know a couple different spots where the dunes are, and you're like, oh, this is kind of a trek. Like,
Yeah.
getting to the beach. But like you said, like you don't see any cars once you're facing the sand.
Yeah, you see a rattlesnake going to the beach. You see deer. It's just like a different experience.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So let's get back to take me through the process of making a board now. Like, what do you start with, and kind of bring me through that process.
Yeah, so I hand shape polyurethane foam blanks for the most part. It's a company called US Blanks, and the blank is just an oversized surfboard pretty much. So it does have some curve to it, some rocker, and the template is oversized. So you're going to cut your template out of that piece of foam. But, the very first step is selecting the right blank for the board that you're aiming to design. So you have longboard blanks, shortboard blanks, everything in between.
Right.
And everyone's process for hand shaping is different. But the way that I go about it is my first step is foiling the blank. So that means that you're taking the thickness down from nose to tail how you'd like it. So typically a nose and a tail taper out from the center of the board. So if they're all, say starting out 3 inches thick nose to tail, when you foil the blank, you're coming down to about 1 inch thick in the nose, 1 inch thick in the tail, and giving the bottom contour or the bottom curve, the rocker, foiling that in as well. And then the next step, and then skinning the deck of the blank. So you want to take most of your thickness out of the bottom rather than the deck, because the way that foam is blown on a blank, there's actually slightly higher density towards the outer core of the blank. So on the deck side is where you're standing, right?
Yeah.
And so you want to keep as much density and strength in the deck as possible. So you're taking most of that thickness off the bottom of the blank, because that's not where you're standing. You don't want.
Right.
Yeah. So you're doing most of the work on the bottom, foiling it down, then just skinning the top, and then after that, you're cleaning up your planer marks a little bit, and then cutting the template, drawing the template, cutting the template with a handsaw, cleaning that up with the planer, and then once that's all trued up and clean and perfect, then the next step that I would do would be finishing off like nose rocker, and then coming onto the deck side, foiling out the deck. If it's like a flat deck with stepped rails, or if it's got a dome deck or whatever, you're doing all those contours with the electric planer. And then after that, putting in your rail shape, and then cleaning everything up with a sander. I use like a soft pad, a 7-inch pad on a rotary sander. Cleaning everything up and making it smooth, taking out all the planer marks, And then the last step I do is add concaves. Anything that's a concave contour is the last step for my process.
Mm-hmm.
Cleaning it up all again, screening, final screens to make it ready for fiberglassing. You don't want any like bubbles or gouges or any kind of like, you want the foam to be smooth and perfect for fiberglass so that it's not absorbing too much resin and you don't get any bubbles in the fiberglass. That's important.
Yeah, right.
And then so just getting it a really nice finish ready for fiberglassing.
Yeah.
And then for fiberglassing, the process is laminating, installing fin boxes, or doing glass-ons, depending on if you're glassing on the fins or you're putting in like boxes like Futures or FCS. And then you're doing a hot coat, which is just pure resin, and that has a surfacing agent in it so that it's sandable. If you just do pure resin without the surfacing agent, then it's gummy and it'll gum up your sandpaper. So you want to do the
Right.
hot coat. So once it cures, then you can sand it.
Mm-hmm.
And then for all my stock boards, I do one more coat of resin called a gloss coat, and then sand that, and that fills in any little microscopic pinholes and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Most boards you see on a rack are actually CNC shaped, not hand shaped,
Yeah.
and then they're a sanded hot coat only. So
that's just one
coat of resin, and then but for anything that I'm selling, even in a shop on a rack, I do a sanded gloss coat because it adds a minimal amount of weight, just a couple ounces, and it actually adds years and years of life to the board because it's filling any kind of inconsistencies. So my goal personally is to make stuff that lasts a very long time.
Yeah, I was gonna say like that second coat really makes a difference. It seems like as far as the longevity of the board.
It definitely does. Yeah, it's I rarely have any boards fail quickly, so that feels good on my end. I mean, obviously, like working with polyurethane foam and resin, it's petrochemical derived. So it's not the most environmentally friendly products, but I feel like the way that I can mitigate that is by making them to last a long time, and be easily repairable if they need to be. Yeah. And so those are kind of my personal goals with the boards.
That's awesome. So after all that, I mean, well, let's actually back up. So how long does that actually take you to do all of that you just said?
Yeah, so for hand shaping, I'm coming in around 2.5 hours on a shape that I've done a ton of, and then up to like 6 hours if it's not something that I've shaped a lot of, or if it's bigger boards or more complicated shapes. Yeah. And then the fiberglassing process, the thing with fiberglassing is you need to wait for the resin to cure at each stage. Oh, I see. And you can only do one side of the board at a time. So you do the deck, or sorry, rather you typically laminate the bottom and then the deck. So that's you're laminating, waiting a day, grinding the laps, doing another lamination, waiting a day, grinding the laps. Then you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. And so it takes several days
for all that.
All that, and then but as far as like actual time, maybe I don't know, roughly like 6 hours to do the full glassing process, but spread out over like a week. Right.
Which still seems pretty quick for a handmade board. I mean
that's like after having done a bunch of them, right? Yeah.
Right. You kind of got your process dialed in though.
Yeah.
Right?
I would, when I first started shaping, I would spend like a week just shaping a board. Yeah. It took a long time to get to this point, and it was only until the last couple of years I started travel shaping, and that really helped me get faster actually. So going someplace and then shaping boards there, and then having a local glass shop finish them.
Were you learning from somebody, or are you just like traveling around with somebody there as well?
Yeah, no, I'd been invited to shape a couple different places. I've gone to the East Coast now 3 years in a row, and it looks like I'll go next year for the 4th year.
Oh, nice.
At a glass shop called King's Glassing in New York City. Mm-hmm. And then I've also been invited to shape in France and at Atlantic Vibrations, and then down in Costa Rica at a place called House of Somos, which is like a hotel that also has a surfboard factory.
Oh, weird. That's cool.
Attached to it. Yeah, it was a cool opportunity.
That's awesome.
I shaped like 20 for them. So that was cool. That was a good way to just kind of jump into the travel shaping thing. And it's just being in a place where you have a limited amount of time to just get the work done was really good for me. I've always just shaped at my house in the backyard. I built a shaping bay, and and having infinite time is, you can just keep dinking around on the details.
Yeah.
But when you have like a limited amount of time, that was really helpful for me to just, get to it.
Constraint. Yeah.
Yeah.
How is like shaping in those different areas, if any, how is that different? Like, is the surfing culture in all those different places different than it is here?
It is. Yeah. Yeah. How is it different? I mean, each place is pretty unique. I'd say New York's interesting because it's a total melting pot, and it's a very, very friendly surf culture, actually. Like, people are like looking to be buddies, and it's very social, which, I mean, seems to track for New York City, right? And France, it's an older, they've had a pretty strong surf culture there since the 60s, 70s. But they have a lot of builders who are based there. And that was interesting. I got to work with a craftsman hero of mine, actually, this guy, Tristan Maus, who has a label called Fantastic Acid Surfboards, and just seeing his work ethic and his skills in terms of especially working with resin. He's just a total magician. So that was a really great learning experience. And Costa Rica was interesting too. The glasser there was named Corna. He was from Argentina, and he had his own techniques for color and for laminating and everything. And it's very idiosyncratic. It's a lot of craftspeople working in their own little zones, and so you get to pick up techniques from working with other people from other places.
So I know that that kind of dives into like how you approach a board, and like a lot of your boards seem to have a lot of artwork on it. Is that what you got from France, like from that guy, or just everywhere?
I mean, no, that's part of what got me interested in shaping in the first place. Was I love the artistic side of everything. Art's always been a big interest for me. Yeah. And so applying that to boards has been a real pleasure. And I'm always scheming on thinking about like, how could I do a different colorway, and how could I do a different technique to, try and riff on, something that's been done before. I've been playing a lot for the last few years with dyeing fabrics and using that as the color work. So you can actually dye the fiberglass itself, and then use that fiberglass to laminate the board. So that's been a technique I've been really interested in. But then before that, just different techniques of achieving abstract color work, and how you pour the resin and how you mix the resin and all that kind of stuff has always just been fun to play around with. I like boards with color. Yeah.
So, no, I saw the one you just posted recently. I was like, oh man, that looks awesome.
Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, how did you learn how to do all this stuff? Did you learn it? I mean, obviously by practicing, but like as far as the foundation goes, was that at Cal Poly, or you just started?
I just started. At Cal Poly had the shaping class. They have at the Craft Center a shaping class that people can take. It had just started when I was there in 2003, 2004, I think is when I became aware of it. I was a freshman in 2003. But in any case, I never was able to get into that class. I was taking 16 units, and I was also working like 15, 20 hours a week at a restaurant all through college. So I didn't have a ton of extra time. And I did try to sign up for the class a couple of times, but I didn't make it in time. It filled up immediately. Oh, man. Like the couple times I did try. So yeah, it wasn't until I had graduated and I had just a little extra money and a little extra time that I actually made a go of it. And it was the way I learned really was on that Swaylox, the forum. Yeah. Just by reading, like any forum, for a single question, you'd get 20 answers, and they'd all be conflicting with one another.
Always, right?
You're kind of confused, but it was also freeing in a way to recognize that, like, oh yeah, people approach this in all kinds of ways, and these are just some options. Yeah. And so it was a lot of learning by doing. I had the opportunity to watch Mark Andrini shape on one occasion. That was really instructive. I got to watch Ryan Lovelace shape on one occasion. He let me watch him shape a board when I was passing through Santa Barbara years and years ago. That was probably like 2010 or so. So that was a long time ago, but those were helpful moments to see people do it. And then locally, there's a resource, this guy, Nick Cooper, who owns The Craft. It was in San Luis Obispo. Now it's in Morro Bay. And that's where he sells blanks, resin, any kind of supplies for building surfboards.
Yeah.
He's a very good builder himself, and he would always tolerate my million questions when I'd go in there to buy supplies. He would give me tips along the way. And in fact, around 2016 or 2015 or so, I started glassing boards in his shop. He let me go in there at night and on weekends. I got a key to the place, and I was able to work out of there for a few years, which was very kind of him as well.
Oh, nice. But
Yeah.
would he give you like after you do all your thing, would he be like, oh, maybe do that? Or you just be like,
He'd kind of let me do my thing, but
Yeah.
I would always have questions for him.
questions,
I was like,
yeah.
hey, Nick, I'm doing this cut lap.
Mhm.
I was going to, do it in this technique or whatever, or what would you do? And he was always just very generous and patient with kind of sharing his perspective on everything.
yeah. When I was trying to get a couple other people on, they said the same thing about that guy. Like, because did he do the class as well at Cal Poly too?
He might have taught it at some point.
Yeah. I think that's what they said eventually.
Yeah.
But he moved out to Morro Bay, and he's still doing his thing out there, right?
Yeah. So if you need blanks, resin, boat building materials too,
Yeah.
he's super knowledgeable on that. And he was talking about having maybe some boards on the rack there at some point. I'm not sure. He was also talking about maybe starting up doing lessons out of that new spot too. So definitely keep your ear to the ground for that. But Nick's epic, just super salt of the earth, great person, runs a great business, and is just a wealth of knowledge and very willing to share. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think when I talked to a couple other people, they're like, because he was here, we were able to make boards here,
Yeah, exactly.
which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, if he wasn't here, I don't know, it'd be a little harder.
Yeah,
you know?
because otherwise I was going down to Fiberglass Hawaii in Ventura to get blanks and
Mhm.
materials. That was the next closest place, so that's a couple hours.
Yeah, Ventura is a little bit of a trek.
Yeah, so then you're having to strategize around like, okay, I need to get like 30 blanks or whatever at a time,
Yeah.
and it becomes a whole different thing.
So what kind of inspires you with all the all the art that you're putting into your boards? Like, are you drawing from anything, or you're just kind of like seeing what happens with the materials you're using, because you kind of got to work with it in a certain way?
Yeah, I mean, you see imagery, right? That you like, for instance, certain things as a surfboard builder become apparent. Like if you see a certain kind of color work or artwork, it makes me think, oh, how'd they do that?
Yeah.
And that can get the wheels turning sometimes. But a lot of it is just, it is not even surf related. It's just art. I feel like I'm exposed to a lot of art. I love going to a museum. I love seeing, I have friends who are artists, and I love seeing what they do. So I get inspired by color and by, I think I like thinking about how different shapes and forms will complement the shape and form of a board and work in concert with one another.
Mm-hmm.
I think just colors are colors are fascinating to me, and how they I don't know how they pop, and I love color fields like Rothko's and things like that, and I love abstract art.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it seems to be.
I feel like inspiration is just kind of everywhere, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever like looked into like colors and like because I'm a photographer, so like I'm always looking at complementary colors. Like you got your primaries, and then you got your
Yeah.
I'm always looking at that and how to color grade, all that stuff. So do you look at any of that or anything?
Yeah, I have a couple. If I'm stuck on coming up with like I want to do an abstract and I need 3 or 4 colors, I have these color dictionaries that I use sometimes.
Oh, nice.
That are interesting.
Yeah.
And just there's a few of those books that I have lying around that I'll flip through and be like, oh, this combo looks nice, maybe something like that. But yeah, more often than not, it's just a process of discovery. I've also gotten into spraying color. I didn't spray. I used all resin color for a long time, but the last year or two, I've started spraying boards. And often, what I'll do before I spray the board, if I'm just kind of at a loss for what to do, is I have a bunch of blocks of offcuts of foam, and I'll just start painting one of those.
Oh,
and
it's
then
like a template or just like a try.
To kind of free up my mind
Yeah.
a little bit. Just put music on and just start spraying color on it, and then kind of see where it goes. And then once I land on something that looks nice on that block, I'm like, okay, like that combo or that kind of fade or whatever, that kind of form looks nice. So let's jump off that. And then I'll usually spray one more to see if I can kind of replicate it. And then I'll jump onto the board itself. But, it depends. Like oftentimes for color work on customer boards, the customer has a specific thing in mind that they want.
Yeah.
And so they're giving me reference imagery, and either I'll do it or I'll have the glasser I work with primarily is Israel Menezes in San Luis Obispo. His company is Sticks and Logs Glassworks.
Oh, okay.
So more often than not, if it's a custom color for a customer and they have reference imagery, I just give that to Israel and he does it.
He'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dial it in. Do you ask for like images like that for the most part? You're like, hey.
Yeah, if someone wants something specific, for
something
sure.
Specific.
Yeah, it's always helpful because even to the point of like, oh, I want it yellow. It's like, okay, well,
there's all these kinds of yellows. So many yellows.
Yeah, exactly. And then often, if it's in somebody else's brain, there's 99.9% chance it does not match what's in your own brain. So
totally.
So let's look at the same picture together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Are there any board shapers that have really influenced your style, like that you can think of specifically?
For sure. I would say Mark Andrini's a big influence. He was in San Luis Obispo for a long time, but he is primarily known for displacement hulls, which is a kind of round-bottomed surfboard, but particularly geared towards northern and central California surf. So the displacement hulls that come out of like LA for Malibu are these really super pinned out, foiled out, thin railed things that look like UFOs. They're really beautiful, but they're not particularly well suited to the conditions we have up here.
Yeah.
Mark's boards are more full foiled, a little more forgiving for rougher conditions. And I've ridden several of Mark's boards over the years, and they're just really, really great riding surfboards. And then he happens to just be a total gem of a human who's so nice and so sharing in knowledge. I think I mentioned he let me watch him shape a long time ago as well, and has been a big influence in that way as well. So I really love his shapes, and particularly for the surf that we have here. And then beyond him specifically, I mean, there's just so many different styles of shapes, and what got me into shaping in the first place was I really enjoy sampling different styles of boards,
Yeah.
So, different shapers are known for different things. And so I kind of dabble in a little bit everything,
Yeah.
So for like a side cut fish, I was really into the take that Ryan Birch has on side cut fish, right? Or for twinsers, Stu Kenson is known for twinsers. So I've looked at his fin placements. For bonzers, it's like the Campbell brothers are the bonzer guys, right? So I feel like you want to reference the greats, right? Like I'm not here to reinvent the wheel when I'm trying to like do a bonzer or a twinser. It's like you got to start from people who have built up that knowledge. But then hopefully put your own spin on it.
Yeah, right. So going back to the fins that you just said, like how hard was that to kind of dial in like your first couple years, shaping boards? Because that's like obviously one of the most important, I would assume, for a surfboard, right?
Totally. Yeah. So again, like I tend to just just look at everything. So I would go to surf shops and I would take measurement. I'd just bring a tape measure and and measure out like where is everybody putting their fins?
Yeah.
And then kind of come to my own conclusion from there. And over the years I've been surfing since I was like 12, and so I've ridden a lot of different boards. So I've ridden Matt Bialos's, I've ridden Al Merrick's boards, I've ridden a lot of alternative shapes, and I know what I prefer, and I've kind of based my own measurements and where I've kind of landed on things based on my own just personal preferences.
Oh, same.
And so if I've ridden a board that I really love, I'll make a note of like where were the fins on that, and how did that relate to where the rail was and the overall size of the shape and all those things, and kind of distill that into some measurements that work for me personally. And then that's what my starting point is for boards for customers. And then, the best is when you have a custom customer who comes back over time and says like, oh, like I really like that, but it might have felt a little stiff or a little like this or a little that. It's like, okay, so great. We know where your starting point was.
Right.
Let's adjust from there.
Yeah.
And we can move the fins a little forward and it'll loosen it up. Or we can, widen the tail and it'll let you grovel a little better since you're wanting to ride that same shape but in worse waves or whatever. Whatever the customer is feeding back to me, I can then adjust and say like, okay, I know the moves to get it to where you think it'll improve on the next one. And those relationships are epic. Like,
oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, because then you can really dial it in for that individual person.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have a couple people that, have come back and you're just kind of slowly dialing it in for them for what they want, right?
Yeah, that's been the best part about doing this as a business is getting those folks for sure.
So, and they're coming to you through your website or through somewhere else or word of mouth or all of the above or?
All of the above. It's so random. Yeah, like it'll be people who like, oh, I found your board on Craigslist and I bought it and I love it and now I want a custom. Really? Or it's like, oh, my friend got one and he let me ride it and that. Or like, oh, I saw him at Mollusk or Daydream or Central Coast Surfboards or whatever shop that happened to be in. Instagram, I saw it pop up on board porn, so I looked into you. You know what I mean? Like literally, like it's everywhere. Like it's just everywhere. So, I found oftentimes too, like surfboards are one of those items that people really think about for a long time before they purchase because they're expensive, but you don't need it, right? It's like it's not a necessary thing, but it's something that you want because it's in your joy zone of your life. It's like what your hobby or the thing that you're doing for your exercise or just for fun.
Yeah.
So it's people think a lot about that kind of stuff and like, oh, like I want, I know I do too. And so oftentimes people reach out to me and say that they want one and then I won't hear from them for years and then cut to 2-3 years later, then they're like, okay, I'm ready for my custom.
Nice.
And so
that's cool.
It's like a long build up to actually doing a custom with folks more often than not. And that's pretty cool too, because then you've had a few conversations and you can kind of gauge where that person's at and it's a relationship really.
Yeah. Definitely. Is there any boards that you were like, oh, I wish I could try that one, or whoever's doing something cool at the time, or anything like that you're like, oh, I'd like to try that, or
so many. I mean, that's what got me into shaping, right? So I'd love to try a Mick Mackey side cut fish. He's a New Zealand based, New Zealand or Australia, I forget, but in any case, shaper who you don't see a lot of his boards around, or I'd love to try. I got to ride a Skip Fry glider a long time ago, like a 10-6 fish that felt amazing. And I got like 3 waves on it. And then I had to give it back to the person whose board it was. Right. And so like, I'd love to try, he's known for eggs too. I've never ridden one of his Trifin eggs. And he's absolute legend shaper in his 80s now. And
is he still shaping?
Oh yeah. Still shaping, but like
what a legend.
Yeah. Or like a lot of those guys, right? Like, so I mean, it just goes on and on. There's a massive list of shapers who, over the years, I've seen their boards and love them, from afar. One of the best boards I ever rode was a Gary McNabb, who's a kind of underground Encinitas Leucadia guy. And I rode a longboard of his that was maybe my favorite board I've ever ridden.
Really?
I was just trading boards with a random person in the water who wanted to try the board that I was riding. And I just really immediately connected with it. So I'd love to get on a Gary McNabb again, So, there's just, I want to try them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. So what is your like everyday board right now?
I've been riding these Twinsers. So there's an Arctail version called the Panza. And that's kind of a grovelly, more kind of if the waves aren't amazing version of that shape, and then the pintail version as the Panza pintail, and that's when the waves get good. They're both shorter, wider shapes that allow you to ride a shorter length shape that will paddle and ride like a longer board. Just basically a little bit more foam in a shorter package. But they've just been really, really lively, fun, easy to surf. Boards that have a unique kind of rhythm and flow to them that I've been super into the last like year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how long do you keep a board? Like not keep a board, but how long are you surfing with a certain board until you're like, oh, let's hop to something else, or it just kind of varies?
It totally varies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like the keeper boards I'd never get rid of are the ones that I am basing models off of. So if I say like, oh, this one is really special, I want to make a bunch of these, then generally I'll keep that board forever. Or I'll sell it to a really good friend who I make a promise that if they're ever going to sell it, they'll just sell it back to me.
Oh, nice.
So it kind
Yeah.
of stays in the family.
Right. Yeah.
And so those are like the really special ones. And then, I don't know, like I try to give each board that I make for myself personally at least 10 or 15 sessions on it before I write it off. Like for instance, I made myself a better wave fish I'm calling it the CR fish. And the first 6 sessions or so I had on it, I kind of hated it. But I was writing it in not great conditions. And I finally got it at a local reef that has actual power and juice to it on an overhead day. And the thing came alive. It was a completely different experience. And I'm like, okay, this shape is actually really geared towards that type of wave.
Yeah.
And I had envisioned it maybe being more broad than it actually is. It's actually more specialized than I had anticipated. But when I get it in this particular condition, it's actually the board that I would rather be writing than anything else.
Oh, interesting.
So I think it's fascinating how that happens.
Yeah.
Also, like changing the fins on a board can drastically change the way it rides. And so I always recommend if someone hates a board or, from whoever, whatever shaper, whatever board that they're riding, change the fins, see how that feels. And I would venture to guess that you'll have a very different experience if you just do that small change. So
Are you doing that a lot too? Like on your own boards like that?
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I work with, I've been working with a fin maker as well. So we're trying to dial in some specific fins for my boards. And that's been a fun total side quest too. Journey.
Nice.
Yeah.
So are you like giving like a bunch of input and you're like, hey, I want it to do this or that. And then he's like, okay. Like, and then he kind of goes away and comes back and you're like,
Yeah. What we've done so far is I've been drawing templates. So the plan shape of the fin.
Yeah.
And he'll make them and foil them, which is giving them the shape to them. And then I'm redrawing the template based on, okay, like I felt like it was too stiff or too loose or whatever.
Yeah.
And redrawing the template and iterating that, sending it to him, and then he'll send me another set of fins. And we're iterating the design that way.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a good collaboration. His name is Corey Nolan. His brand is called Hydrophile Surfcraft, and he's on the East Coast. He's in New Hampshire, actually.
Oh.
And so it's been fun because he's similar to me in the backyard, like one-man maker kind of situation.
Yeah.
And he's a really great craftsman, and the quality of work that he's able to do just from a home shop is incredible. It's
He's
really
doing it
cool.
all out of his house.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
In the basement. Yeah.
So you'll send him a bunch of stuff. So he'll send you back a bunch of stuff then, like
Yeah.
not just one fin.
Yeah, we're doing like a few different
couple
sets. We're
different ones.
working on a canard set, which is the lead fins, and its Windsors are called canards. They're small. And you can also use those canards as like a side bite for a different fin setup. And then upright style twin fin, and then a keel style twin fin. So uprights have a shorter base, taller profile, and the keels have a longer base, shorter profile. And so they each have their own application depending on the shape of the board. Yeah.
How'd you get hooked up with that guy?
He wanted to do a trade initially. And I said, great. Well, I scratched that. I take that back. I actually ordered a set of fins from him to do a semi-finless board. So long base, really shallow, almost similar to like a Bonzer runner, except instead of having the crazy cant to them, they're straight up and down. And so he made me those sets, or that set of fins, and I was just blown away by the craftsmanship of it. And then when I was on the East Coast shaping this last stint in spring, he wanted an asymmetrical mini Simmons style board, and he offered to do trade.
Oh, nice.
And I said, great. I've been wanting to try and iterate some fins. Would you want to do different variations on some of my designs for my own boards?
Yeah.
And he said, great. And so that's how that relationship has gone.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And
nice.
it's been really cool to work with a very similarly minded person who's deep into surfcraft, but from the fin perspective. So
yeah,
it's like very complimentary.
So how were you doing the fins before you met that guy? Were you just
getting stock fins?
You getting stock fins? Okay.
Yeah, I prefer True Ames, based out of Goleta here.
Mm-hmm.
Super great heritage company. Chuck Ames started it in, I want to say, the 70s, and so they've been around for ages. And they still do. They do mostly. I don't know if it's mostly what percentage or what, but they still do manufacture somewhat in the United States. As well as overseas, but they have like a deep heritage in surf culture in California, and they have the license for like George Greenow's fins, and for a lot of shapers that I admire as well. And so that was my primary company that I'll still recommend people get fins through.
Yeah. Right. How have you seen like the surfboard shaping, community or industry changed kind of as you gotten started? Is it completely different now? Like, are a lot of people just buying, off the rack boards, or, how has that affected you at all?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my thing is so idiosyncratic. Like, I'm here alone in my shop in Slow. I feel very removed from the surfboard industry as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just more or less, it's like I work with Israel, the glasser. I sometimes work with Corey Richmond in Morro Bay too. He's another glasser. So I have these individual relationships with people who are also board building, but I feel like I don't have a real good sense of what the surfboard industry as a whole even is. I do know, like, if you go to the rack on a local surf shop, it's like 98% machine shaped, larger manufacturers. So it's a very different thing than I'm doing. And the scale of production of, like, say, like a Channel Islands or a Firewire is just like 1,000x of what I'm doing. So it just feels like a very different thing than what I'm doing. I just feel very grateful to get support from the shops that I do have, which have given me a larger platform and a larger exposure to an audience outside of this immediate area.
Yeah.
Mollusk Surf Shop, Daydream Surf Shop, Icons of Surf, like all these shops have like crazy great reputations, and I feel just beyond lucky that I get to be in those environments and get exposure to their audiences, because I think that's really been helpful to me.
Yeah. So how do you approach those like stores? Like, I know you have your stuff in CCS and Slow.
CCS carries them sometimes. They don't have any stock currently. Shell Beach Surf Shop has some boards currently. Sea and Green in Cambria has one or two currently. It's a mix. Mollusk invited me to be a shaper for them, which was awesome. Cool. That was a real honor. And same with Daydream. Right when they were opening, they were trying to get shapers to start the shop with. And I was there from day one, so that was a real great opportunity and honor too. But other shops, I've pitched to and have said yes or no, So I've definitely had my share of no's, but that's fine too.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, it's just you gotta
just
do what you gotta do, right?
You
gotta. If you need orders, you gotta pitch.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, I just feel grateful for the shops that I'm in, and it's ranged. Some of them I've pitched, and some of them have asked me. Not
a little bit of mix of both.
Yeah.
So do you travel for do you go on surfing trips or anything like that?
Oh, sure. I mean, that's ideal.
That's ideal, right?
Yeah.
When you're not working.
I have a 2-year-old, so I haven't been on a surf trip in a little bit. But
that'll lock you down for a little bit.
We did a camp trip to Halama last year for a couple nights, and that was nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So before you had your kid, were you going a bunch of different places and surfing stuff, or?
I would get to Mexico a couple times a year for the I would say I don't know, 10, 12 years prior to having a kid, that was my main zone.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's all kinds of spots. Everyone knows Mexico has great waves.
Yeah. Definitely.
So I guess I won't get more specific than that, but
Fair enough.
But I had a couple go-to zones that I would go to 2 to 3 times a year.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you haven't have you gone to like other places? Like I've heard like New Zealand and like.
I haven't made it to New Zealand, Australia, but I have been to Tahiti. Tahiti's amazing. Heavy waves, really good heavy waves. But I managed to get a couple, which was really great. And we have family. My wife's cousin and her brother are both in Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
On Oahu, so I've gotten to travel there a few times to surf, which has been great. Been to El Salvador, Costa Rica, Nicaragua. Where else? France. France has great waves. It's probably the most wife-friendly surf vacation. Yeah. The food's insane.
The food's good,
and she loves the French culture. It's a little bit more, a little less rustic than a lot of the places that I go otherwise.
Yeah.
I tend to prefer sleeping in the dirt and that kind of thing. On a surf trip, if I can just be camping and spend all day just posted up, that's ideal for me. Yeah. Not ideal for Kendra.
Sure.
Yeah, but
that's fine.
That's fine. That's fair. So France. So we'll go to France.
I guess we'll compromise.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No. So the couple times I've been able to go there have been amazing and really wonderful from both a surf standpoint and just a culture standpoint. I feel very lucky to have traveled there a couple times. But yeah, I mean, there's kind of like board design. It's like I want to go everywhere. I would love to have the opportunity to travel pretty much most places with waves. I'd be happy to go to. So it's looking like this coming year, I might have the opportunity to travel to Japan.
Oh, cool.
Which would be a real dream come true. So I'm kind of putting that together right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. How is the surf culture out there?
Enthusiastic. Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
It looks like they get some really great waves on typhoon swells as well. So
crazy.
Kind of similar. It's from what I can tell, it seems similar to the East Coast, where it's a little more fickle, a little bit more short period swells, where it's storm dependent. Yeah. But occasionally it can get really epic waves. So I'd love to hopefully luck into some surf over there, and otherwise just absorb the culture. And
Japan's supposed to be awesome.
Yeah, I mean it would be a dream. I've been wanting to go there since I was a kid, so we'll see if that works out. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I want to go there because it's like it's got all the cameras. That's where all the cameras are made.
Yeah, technology is outrageous, right? It's They're living in the future.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not even that, but like they have a lot of old cameras. That's where they're all made.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, like all the film cameras, and
they're
true. All there.
I had an old Nikon that it was a film camera, 35 millimeter, and on the just as a bit of history, it was kind of wild. It said "Made in Occupied Japan."
Oh,
which
wild.
is kind of wild, yeah. So it's just immediately post-war, which is kind of heavy. But the thing worked perfectly for such an old camera. It functions perfect. I still have it.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, so it was kind of amazing. Just the mechanics of it had all steel parts and just perfect.
And like the pictures that come out of those old 35, 120 film cameras are just beautiful.
Totally perfect glass.
Yeah, exactly. The glass was like made, and it's made for that medium format film, and it's gorgeous. Like all of my early kids pictures are like on 35 millimeter or 120.
That's so special. I like stopped shooting film when my kid was born. It was just all with the phone. I need to get back into it because
it's expensive
and it's also like I've just been on the spray and pray kind of program where it's like you just get all the shots and then you can pick one out. Yeah. Whereas obviously with film you have to really be choosy about the shot, and I get stressed. I don't want to miss the moment,
Yeah, and they're always like the kid your age is your kid's age is they're just so busy and they're everywhere.
Exactly.
You're like I gotta get it.
Yeah.
So, what was I gonna say? Oh, did you go to Kelly Slater's Surf Beach at all?
No, that was a customer.
Customer.
I had posted their video, and he was
wild.
Very lucky to be invited there. I'm so jealous. That looks. I mean, it looks like a crazy fun wave to surf. Yeah.
Did he take your board though?
Yeah, he was riding a chancla. It was a side cut fish. and he ripped it. Yeah, it was fun to get the video.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Huh. How did he get hooked up with that? Or he just
I'm not sure. I mean, he's San Francisco based chef, and so he knows a lot of folks in the Bay Area, and I'm assuming it was a friend from there.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know really.
Yeah.
I just got the videos texted to me. I was
You're
like, sick.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah.
Can you just tag me, please?
Yeah, exactly. Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you see as like, your, like, what do you see kind of going forward as far as your boards, just kind of honing your craft and experimenting with different techniques, I guess?
100%. Yeah. Just, I'm excited to try. I was just at the boardroom show this past weekend. I'm really excited to try this stuff called Polyola, which is a recycled foam. They take recycled foam dust and reincorporate it into a new mix and then send it back as blanks. So that's an interesting take on trying to make a more environmentally sustainable surfboard. That could be a fun direction to explore. I have a friend who's shaped them and likes them. So I'd like to try that. And then just different shapes for different waves. I've made myself a step up for this winter that I'm excited to glass. Just a quad, but it's a further iteration of a board I've been calling the OBG, which is the Ocean Beach gun, kind of geared towards Ocean Beach in San Francisco is one of my favorite waves. And the shape is geared around that. And I've made different iterations for a couple people over the years and gotten their feedback, and then just made myself another version for this coming season that I'm excited about trying. Asymmetrical boards are interesting. I've made several iterations of those, and I just shaped myself based on a customer down in Malibu. He has iterated the same shape now 7 different times, and each iteration keeps getting more and more asymmetrical. And this last one that I made him, he swears is the best surfboard he's ever ridden. So I took the dimensions and the template from that particular one and applied it to myself and made myself a custom of that particular shape. And so I haven't glassed it yet, but I've shaped it, and I'm excited to try that.
Oh, cool.
So, just iterating design and experimenting a little bit with materials is exciting.
Yeah.
And, just keeping it going.
Nice.
I'd love to shape some agaves. I gathered agave stalks a few years ago that I had intended to make a blank out of, and when I was storing them, they rotted.
Oh, no.
Which was a bummer because it was pretty labor intensive to get the stalks and everything. And I actually, at the boardroom show this last weekend, I ran into Gary Linden, who is maybe the most well-known person for working with agave as a material. And so he basically told me how I was storing them was wrong and why they rotted. Yeah, he took me to school, which is great. Again, love picking out the knowledge of the people who have gone there before, right? Yeah. And so he gave me some tips on how to properly store and dry agave stalks so that I can make another attempt at that.
Oh, cool.
Hopefully gathering up some fresh agave this winter when some bloom, and making a go at a blank. I guess that'll put me out about a year from actually making a blank, but nonetheless, it's in the hopper. It's a project that I have in mind.
Definitely.
Having that talk with Gary was really great and kind of inspiring, and kind of reignited the fire on that. There's just a million different little directions to explore.
Crazy.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else you want to add before we kind of wrap this up? And then obviously plug where you're at, and I'll plug it once I post it, obviously. But yeah, anything else you want to add?
No, I really appreciate your interest and you having me on and reaching out.
Thanks for saying yes.
Yeah, happy to. No, any bit helps, and I really just appreciate it. Anyone who takes an interest, I think it's a real honor. And if anyone has any interest in getting aboard, you can follow me on Instagram at Shea Somma, SHEASOMMA. And then the website is SOMMA Special Designs, SOMMA specialdesigns.com.
Yeah.
And
I'll throw that all up too.
Yeah. And then I just dropped off 10 boards at Icons of Surf in San Clemente. So if you're in Southern California, they have a bunch of boards. Locally, Shell Beach Surf Shop has some boards. Sea and Green in Cambria, and or just hit me up. I'm hoping to do Demo at some point, maybe in November. I've been doing demos maybe twice a year. And then actually next week, next weekend, October 26th at Field Day Coffee, we're doing a board swap, a pop-up board swap.
Oh, nice.
There. So I'll have a couple used boards, and I'll be there in person if anyone has any questions there.
Okay. And then do you have anything in any other stores? Is there some on the East Coast anywhere?
Yeah, so currently Pilgrim Surf Shop is out of stock. They might have one, but Rhode Island Surf Company in Rhode Island has at least a couple logs and a couple of mini supers. And then House of Somos, I think, in Costa Rica has one or two left of the batch that I made for them. And then Colors of Surfing in Biarritz, France has one. So it's like one or two here and there. Like it's just kind of all over the place. Okay. Mowgli Surf Shop in LA has one. Santa Barbara, Mollusk Santa Barbara will have a few more. I'm currently shaping their batch. They'll have a few in a few weeks here. Mollusk Venice has a couple, I think one or two right now.
Sweet.
So yeah, one or two here and there scattered around.
Yeah, no, definitely. All right, man. Anything else you think before we kind of wrap this up?
That's it. Just thanks so much for the interest. Can't thank you enough. And
I
really appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions, I'm very contactable via Instagram and through the website. So I'll try and get back with you in a day or two.
It's perfect. All right, sweet. Let's shut this down.